Emily had always believed in the fairy tale endings. Growing up, she spent countless nights reading romance novels, watching classic movies where the girl always won the prince's heart despite adversity. When she met David, everything seemed to fall into place. He was charming, supportive, and genuinely kind. Emily thought that together, they would navigate life's challenges side by side, hand in hand. However, no story is without its complications. And for Emily, the complication came in the form of Marilyn, David's mother. From the moment Emily and David became serious, Marilyn's influence was palpable. She was a woman of refinement, always impeccably dressed, always holding an air of superiority. She was kind enough when they first met, but the kindness was laced with judgment. As soon as David introduced her to Emily, Marilyn's critical eye swept over the younger woman like a hawk observing its prey. "David, darling, you must understand that marriage is a partnership," Marilyn said on their first dinner together, her voice smooth but sharp. "It's not just about love. It's about compatibility, security, and appearance." Emily had smiled politely, suppressing the unease that crept up her spine. But beneath her smile, she understood that Marilyn was more concerned with what she thought Emily could provide for David than with the love they shared. David, caught in the middle of his devotion to Emily and his mother's ever-present influence, always tried to smooth over any tension. "Mom, you'll like her once you get to know her," he would say. But Marilyn didn't want to get to know Emily, at least not in the way David hoped. She wanted to control the narrative of his life, and she made no effort to hide her disdain for the young woman who had stolen her precious son's heart. Emily's life, once filled with excitement and the joy of being in a new relationship, slowly became overshadowed by Marilyn's constant presence. It began with small, seemingly innocent comments. Emily, a woman of humble means who had never been interested in wealth or status, was often criticized for not meeting the standards Marilyn had set. When Emily wore a simple dress to a family event, Marilyn would comment, "Oh, darling, I do wish you'd try something a little more elegant. David deserves someone who can match his station." It wasn't just her appearance, Marilyn critiqued. There were also the subtle digs at Emily's cooking, her homemaking, and even her career choices. Marilyn, a successful businesswoman, found it hard to believe that Emily could be satisfied working as a schoolteacher when there were far grander possibilities for someone like her son's wife. One evening, after a family gathering, Marilyn invited Emily to her home for a chat. David had left to handle some work matters, and Emily, eager to make peace with her mother-in-law, agreed to go. "Emily, dear," Marilyn began once they were seated in her lavish sitting room, "I've been thinking about your future with David. You see, my son is destined for great things, and he needs a partner who can keep up with him. A woman who understands the finer things in life." Marilyn's words were smooth, like honey, but they carried an edge of criticism. Emily felt her cheeks flush, but she remained composed. "I love David," she said, her voice steady. "And I think we make a great team." Marilyn's eyes glinted with something akin to amusement. "Oh, dear. It's not just about love, you know. Love fades. What you need is a shared vision, and I don't think you and David are quite on the same page." She took a sip of her wine, letting the words settle between them. "Don't you think you'd be happier if you had more status? More influence?" Emily's pulse quickened. "I'm happy with David the way things are," she replied, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Marilyn smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see, dear. We'll see." The conversation lingered in Emily's mind for days. It wasn't the first time Marilyn had planted seeds of doubt, but something about that evening felt different. For the first time, Emily began questioning whether she was truly the right fit for David. Weeks turned into months, and the pressure from Marilyn intensified. She would subtly suggest ways to change Emily's behavior or lifestyle, each suggestion aimed at making her feel inadequate in some way. At family gatherings, Emily began to feel like a mere spectator. Marilyn would shower David with praise, singling out all the things he had achieved and the heights he could reach, all the while implying that Emily had little to offer in comparison. One evening, at a particularly lavish family event, Marilyn made another comment that stuck with Emily long after the night was over. "You know, Emily," she said sweetly, "David could really use a wife who knows how to host a gathering. You've seen my parties, haven't you? I simply cannot imagine David throwing one without the right guidance." She glanced over at David, a silent plea for support in her eyes. David, sensing his mother's veiled criticism, chuckled awkwardly and tried to change the subject. But Emily couldn't ignore the sting of Marilyn's words. It was as though nothing she did would ever measure up. No matter how hard she tried to fit into Marilyn's world, she was never going to be good enough. That night, Emily lay awake, her thoughts tangled in frustration and self-doubt. David was asleep beside her, blissfully unaware of the tension that had been building in their relationship. Emily had always prided herself on being a strong, independent woman, but Marilyn's subtle cruelty was wearing her down. Her once bright spirit began to dim. Emily felt herself withdrawing from David, unsure how to communicate the growing anxiety within her. Marilyn had succeeded in planting doubts, not just about her ability to be a wife, but about her worthiness of David's love.